Dark, tense music builds. Camera zooms on a man stepping out of his truck, coffee mug in hand. Narrator, calm, commanding. They thought 3 bikers would be enough. 3 engines growling in my driveway. 3 men cornering my wife against the chicken coop. But they didn't know who I was, or how fast 3 minutes can change everything. Yes, quick cuts. A hand grabbing a wrist, a biker slammed into gravel, feathers exploding from a chicken coop, neighbors gasping at footage on a projector screen. Narrator. The HOA president thought intimidation would silence me. Instead, she sent her thugs straight into the fight of their lives. 3 minutes later, they weren't threatening anymore. They were begging me to stop. Fade to black, bold white text appears. HOA sent biker thugs to scare my wife. 3 minutes later, they were begging me to stop. Narrator, low, steady. Like, subscribe, and watch what happens when you send fear to the wrong doorstep. They thought they could scare my family. They thought that 3 leather-clad bikers roaring down the lane into Oakridge Meadows could intimidate the quiet house on the corner, the one with chickens in the yard, smoke curling out of the chimney, and a woman strong enough to hold her ground even when engines idled like predators. But they didn't know me. They didn't know Sarah. And they didn't know that their mistake wasn't showing up here. It was laying a hand on her. It was Tuesday. The sun was low enough to blind me as I turned into my drive, the whole yard awash in gold light. But the picture that unfolded before me wasn't a peaceful farmstead scene. Sarah was backed against the chicken coop, arms loose at her sides, shoulders stiff, voice calm but sharp as glass. 3 men surrounded her in a half circle, each one with a vest stitched in patches of faded skulls and fire, each one leaning too close, like wolves scenting blood. One grinned at her with teeth the color of cigarettes. Another cracked his neck and spat into the dirt. Their bikes growled behind them, black metal monsters rattling the boards of my fence. I cut the engine of my truck and stepped out slow, feeling the gravel shift under my boots. It wasn't the first time I'd stepped toward danger. My body remembered too well the heavy weight of combat gear, the rhythm of orders barked across desert heat, the sound of fear in the voices of men younger than me. The leader turned, sizing me up, barking, HOA business, as if that 3-letter acronym gave him permission to stand on my land, in my yard, inches from my wife. My jaw tightened. Sarah's eyes flicked toward me. No fear, only relief that I was there now, standing between her and whatever these idiots thought they were about to do. 3 against 1 never had been fair. Not for them. You've got 30 seconds to explain yourselves, I said. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My voice carried the kind of steel that once stopped fresh recruits mid-sentence. Years of training had burned authority into my tone, the sort you don't learn from books, the sort that makes a man's stomach drop before he realizes why. The leader smirked. He thought restraint meant weakness. President Loretta don't like you ignoring notices. Consider this encouragement. Yakis. And there it was, the queen bee herself. Loretta, head of the HOA, self-appointed tyrant of Oakridge Meadows. She'd been itching for a fight ever since I challenged her rules. The chicken coop? Illegal, she said. Firewood stacked wrong? Fine worthy, she threatened. But now she'd crossed the line, sending muscle to lean on my wife? 3 minutes. That's what I gave them. You've got 3 minutes to get off my property. Stay and you'll regret it. They laughed. The leader cracked his knuckles and leaned toward Sarah, breath hot, geez, rin wide, and that was his last mistake. It happened fast. My body moved before thought. The air changed, the same way it does when lightning strikes before thunder shakes the ground. His hand lifted toward her shoulder. Mine caught it mid-motion. In one fluid snap, I twisted his wrist, drove my weight down, and slammed him into the gravel. Dust and rocks exploded up around us as his cheek scraped into the dirt. His groan was drowned out by the hens shrieking behind the fence. I still held my coffee in the other hand. I didn't spill a drop. The other 2 froze, eyes wide, caught between disbelief and sudden panic. They'd just watched their leader folded in half like cheap lawn furniture. Next, I said, voice steady. The second one lunged with a wild punch that belonged in a bar fight, not reality. It was sloppy, desperate. I ducked under, hooked his elbow, and spun him like a gate, throwing him shoulder first into the chicken coop fence. Wood cracked, feathers exploded skyward. The hens clucked their outrage, wings flapping like alarm bells. Sarah smirked, crossing her arms. Even now she wasn't scared, just watching me dismantle grown men with the same casualness as fixing a fence post. The last one revved his bike, the engine roaring in a show of power. He must have thought the noise would remind me who they were, that fear would crawl back into my chest. Instead, I walked right up to him, grabbed both handlebars, and yanked. The machine toppled sideways in a heap of chrome and fury, pinning his leg. He howled, thrashing uselessly under the weight. I crouched down, eye level, my shadow cutting across his face. "Tell your boss," I said quietly. "Next time she wants to send a message, she better send a letter. Because if she sends men to threaten my wife again..." I pressed down on the bars, making him squirm harder. "She won't get them back in one piece." Behind me, the other two were groaning, stumbling to their feet, begging me to stop. One clutched his ribs, the other his wrist, both muttering excuses. We didn't sign up for this, man. It was just a scare job. Their bravado had bled out onto the gravel. Sarah stepped forward, brushing dirt off her jeans, calm as ever. 3 minutes exactly, she said, glancing at her watch. The sound of defeat rattled down the road as their sputtering engines dragged them away. They'd come to intimidate. They left limping, humiliated, and nursing wounds that wouldn't just fade with ice packs. But the fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Loretta had just declared war, and she had no idea what kind of enemies she'd made. Word spread through Oakridge Meadows faster than wildfire. By sunset, whispers were chasing each other across fences, over hedges, through phone calls. Neighbors peeked through blinds, curious. By dinner, the story was half legend. By nightfall, Loretta herself stormed up my porch steps, face red enough to match the painted tips of her nails. Her pearl necklace bounced against her chest with every furious word. "You assaulted them! Property damage! I could have you arrested!" she shrieked. I didn't answer right away. I just let her rage, her voice cutting across the quiet night like a blade. Then I stepped aside, opened the door just wide enough, and reached for the laptop on the table. One click, and the big screen flickered to life, security camera footage rolling. There they were, in full color. 3 bikers rolling up, one crowding my wife, me dismantling them in 3 minutes flat, coffee mug never leaving my hand. The sound of their begging, the cracking groans, Sarah's dry remark about timing, it was all there. I turned the volume up just enough for Loretta to hear the part that mattered. One of the bikers, scrambling to his feet, yelling through his pain. "The HOA president paid us!" Loretta's face drained of blood. I paused the video on that frame. Her silence was heavier than her shouting. "You're right," I said softly. "You could have me arrested. But see, Loretta, you'd need witnesses, and something tells me your men aren't in the mood to go public about what just happened to them." For the first time since I'd met her, Loretta had no words. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish gasping on dry land. She turned on her heel, heels clicking furiously down my steps. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. The neighborhood had a story. I had evidence. And Loretta? She had bikers too humiliated to defend her. This was only the beginning. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Folding chairs filled every corner of the rec center, neighbors shoulder to shoulder, murmuring about bikers, bruises, and rumors of a video. I sat near the front with Sarah, calm, waiting. Loretta perched at the head table, hair sprayed into a helmet, lips pressed into a thin, furious line. I didn't say a word, not until the room settled and Loretta tried to move on with business as usual. That's when I stood. I walked to the projector, plugged in my laptop, and hit play. Gasps sucked the air from the room, every eye fixed on the screen. There it was. The intimidation, the hand reaching toward my wife, the snap of bone and grunt of pain as I dropped their leader into the gravel. The audience winced, then gasped again when the second slammed into the chicken coop fence, feathers raining like confetti. The laughter came when the third begged, voice cracking, "Please, man, we didn't sign up for this." And then the kicker. The clip played where one blurted out, "The HOA president paid us." Loretta shot out of her seat, screeching about context, about lies, about editing. But it didn't matter. Half the room already had. Their phones up, recording the footage, recording her meltdown. One neighbor stood, voice loud and steady, reading aloud from the state law on criminal coercion and harassment. Another waved a printed ordinance about misuse of HOA funds. By the time I closed the laptop, silence pressed down heavy. Every set of eyes had turned from the screen to Loretta. For the first time, she looked small. The bikers themselves didn't stay loyal long. Pain has a way of clearing loyalties fast. Two of them limped into the sheriff's office within 24 hours, nursing bruises, handing over receipts. Screenshots of texts from Loretta, a handwritten note on HOA letterhead promising compensation for a scare job. It was damning, it was direct, and it was enough. By week's end, Loretta was served. Conspiracy, harassment, misuse of funds. Deputies marched her out of her home while neighbors leaned out of porches and windows, clapping, whistling, some cheering outright. She shrieked about neighborhood safety, but no one bought it. The queen of Oakridge Meadows had crowned herself Tyrant, and now her reign ended in handcuffs. Sarah and I watched from our porch, my coffee steaming in my hand. Patrol cars rolled past, neighbors waved. One even shouted, "Better send a letter next time." Reforms came quick. Transparency, budget oversight, strict bans on intimidation or off-book enforcement, and the cherry on top? Weeks later, those same bikers returned, not in leather, not in skull patches. They came in work shirts, humble, polite, offering to fix fences and patch roofs as restitution. No more swagger, no more growls, just men who had learned the hard way that intimidation can snap back harder than they imagined. "As long as you don't mess with my wife again," I told them with a smile, "we'll get along just fine." And Oakridge Meadows? It finally felt like home again. Vacant Oakridge M. Edo shifted after that night like a storm finally breaking. For years, neighbors had lived under Loretta's thumb, every hedge trimmed to regulation, every trash bin measured against arbitrary rules. Fear wasn't spoken out loud, but it was there, woven into every fine slipped under a door, every whisper about who was on her list. That grip shattered the moment deputies led her out in cuffs. Sarah and I walked the streets the next week, and people stopped us, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with outright gratitude. One man admitted he'd paid fines for lawn chairs left out overnight. Another confessed Loretta had threatened to review his property over a basketball hoop in his driveway. Each story was the same, intimidation disguised as community standards. And each one ended with a sigh of relief. The reforms the HOA voted on weren't just words on paper. Neighbors volunteered for oversight committees. Budgets were opened. Decisions had to be voted on. The days of Loretta's unchecked rule were gone, replaced by something closer to the neighborhood we'd all thought we were buying into. And the bikers, they kept their word. They patched fences, mended roofs, even built a playground set behind the community center. Some folks muttered that it was strange, watching men who'd once revved engines at wives and children now hammer nails and haul lumber. But humility has a way of softening edges. They weren't saints, but they were no longer Loretta's dogs. On a quiet Sunday morning, Sarah and I sat on our porch again, mugs warm in our hands, chickens pecking lazily in the yard. She leaned against me, watching kids ride bikes down the street. "You realize," she said with a small smile, "you changed this place in 3 minutes." 3 minutes and a coffee mug, I corrected, making her laugh. The truth was simpler than all the rumors, though. Loretta thought she could turn our neighborhood into her empire, thought she could send fear to, my doorstep like a delivery package. She forgot one thing. Fear doesn't work on men who've already faced worse, and it never works on families who stand together. If there's one lesson from Oakridge Meadows, it's this. Sometimes the loudest tyrants fall the fastest. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is standing your ground, protecting the people who matter, and never letting anyone write the rules of your own home. And to you watching this story unfold, if you've enjoyed it, if you believe in standing up when others try to knock you down, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's ever had to deal with an HOA nightmare. Because trust me, this story traveled farther than Loretta ever imagined.